quickly, I just wanted to give you an example of what happens to the data that you provide to CDP and where it goes with all these investors and companies asking for it. Well, many of the responses to CDP get scored on either a disclosure rating or a performance rating. And the carbon disclosure rating is the most popular rating. It ranks companies based on the quality of their disclosure. So it does not provide any opinion on how good the company is at necessarily reducing emissions, but it provides investors and others with a clear assessment of how transparent this company is being, and therefore how well the company understands its issues. And it does provide or serve as a proxy for good management for many of the investors who view it. And this carbon disclosure rating is available on the Google Finance page for companies who have received it. If you go on to the next page, please. So CDP data is also available on the Bloomberg Professional Network. And this is an example of the greenhouse gas emissions reporting by BHP Billiton to CDP, and shows you how this information appears in a Bloomberg terminal. It means that users of these terminals can have access to CDP data very quickly and easily and start looking at it in terms of normalization. For example, they can compare it with EBITDA or sales and various other information. Now, this is just the very beginning of what this information means, and traders and others are still beginning to understand that. But this environmental, social, and governance data, of which CDP data is a big part of, is one of the fastest growing areas of interest by Bloomberg terminal users, and is being we have a number of data partners, including Bloomberg, who are very keen to use the CDP data to help inform investment decision making and make sure they have the full picture. So if you move on to the next slide, I just wanted to give you some example of where CDP is going. Our mission is to promote the quality and impact of our data. We're very, very focused on improving the data that we have and working with some of the world's leaders in data to make sure that this data can really be turned into some useful information. We're focused on reducing the reporting burden. The same questions asked of thousands of companies around the world to provide a very standardized request that covers all aspects of climate change. We're now allowing reporting in multiple languages. There are possibilities for you to upload information from your carbon calculators directly into the CDP online response system. That's what ORS stands for. We're reaching out to more companies than ever before, meaning that responses to CDP can then be compared with peer companies in more countries than ever before. And we are committed to minimizing the change, and we are not making any major changes to the core questions for CDP in 2012 when that comes next year. Move to the next slide, and I would encourage you all to get in touch with us directly if you've got any questions. Make sure you disclose to CDP, even if you don't know the answers to all the questions. Considering these questions is going to help your company get ready to be competitive in the low carbon economy. The low carbon economy is around the corner, and you don't want to be playing catch up when it finally comes. It's very important to get this information, build expertise, and start reporting. Transparency is key. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, and look forward to hearing from 5 Winds.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Zoe. It's really tremendous insights into the where CDP is. And I think one of the things that, as we get into the next section that Duncan will come into, many of the folks within, in our experience, and I think this is around the world, but perhaps you can see it more in America, as look at things such as the CDP, one of the questions is, why should we be reporting to that? I think your last comment there, I think, is important, and it's a subject that Duncan will be getting into, is that the low carbon economy is around the corner, and in some places you could say there's evidence of it being in place already. There are requests throughout the supply chain for this type of information, and I think your emphasis on the financial data and how that is being integrated into the core financial reporting systems of the world is evidence of that. But then the second piece of that is that reporting doesn't have to be difficult. And so, Duncan, as you get in here, I think that'll be interesting to our participants, is kind of getting that perspective on how to approach reporting, how to make sure you're getting business value out of that, but also how to look at it from a perspective. So, again, Duncan Noble, with senior consultant with PE 5 Wins, and been focusing on carbon management for 20 years. And so, Duncan, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks very much, John. And thank you, Zoe, for giving us that really informative session on the Carbon Disclosure Project. I'm going to talk about, I guess, 4 things really. In general, where is carbon management going, and what are some of the underlying drivers behind that? We'll look at some examples of trends and the value of disclosure. And then we'll look about what, when you see the term good carbon management, what does that really mean? And then finally, how to make reporting to the CDP both more valuable and easier to do. And I won't really be doing a test, but we will have one more poll to try to keep your attention focused there. So our approach to carbon management briefly is this, helping companies to understand how climate change affects their businesses, both their operations and their products, helping them to improve the footprint of their own operations as well as their value chain and how they manage carbon, and then helping to translate that into business value. We did ask people when they registered for this webinar what their primary goals were, just because we wanted to make sure we were addressing those. And of most of the people who registered did respond, and it's pretty evenly split between 3 groups of people. I mean, there's people that either want to do their first CDP report or improve their report. There's another third of people that wanted to improve their carbon management, and then another third that wanted to learn about our CDP reporting solution, which is called SOFI Carbon Explorer. So I'm hoping we can address all of those 3 groups, and I realize we said 1 priority. You probably had other goals as well, so I'm sure there's overlap there. So what's going on out there? There's a lot of things happening in the carbon space, and it can be very confusing. Some of the key trends that we see happening: private regulation, or what we sometimes call private regulation. Obviously, there's a lot of activity on the public regulation side of things, but that tends to ebb and flow. But more constant, we're seeing a lot of business-to-business requirements around carbon reporting and disclosure. Certainly last year, there was a guidance issued by the Securities and Exchange Commission, and I think that's important. It certainly validates the work of the Carbon Disclosure Project about the importance of climate change in terms of material risks for companies. Another trend, and just picking up from that, I mean, you saw some examples in Zoe's presentation of financial world's interest in this issue, the Bloomberg terminals, the Google Finance, and I think last week S&P announced that they were going to start rating companies based on their climate change risks. So I assume they're going to be buying some data from Zoe and the folks at the Carbon Disclosure Project to be able to do that. We're also seeing another trend which is really focused on expanding the boundaries of the carbon footprint, and this is related to some of the other trends in terms of broader definition of risks and opportunities. So what's behind some of these trends? What are some of the business drivers there, and why should you report to the CDP, as John asked the question there? There's several reasons for that. One is basically the stakeholder expectations are rising. From the first time that the CDP issued their request back in 2003, I think it was, and had 200 people respond, or 200 companies respond, to now, the bar has been raised in terms of what's expected from various stakeholders. And those stakeholders could include investors, regulators, customers, employees, and obviously the broader public. There's a broader view of risks and opportunities, and I think you see that reflected in the evolution of the Carbon Disclosure Project questionnaires. It's much more sophisticated now in terms of the range of risks and opportunities they expect you to report on. Certainly the SEC guidance was not new requirements in terms of companies have always been expected to disclose material risks. However, the fact that they're pointing out how climate change could affect those material risks and opportunities in quite a bit of detail tells you something. And certainly, Walmart is involved in understanding some risks and opportunities in its own supply chain. And I think stepping back even a bit from that, this is all about sort of avoiding local optimization. You have to look beyond your own operations into upstream footprint, your chain. What's the footprint? What are the risks and opportunities in your supply chain? What's the risks and opportunities associated with the use of your product in the use phase? And then even outside of your own value chain, in the sort of policy environment that you operate on, what are the risks and opportunities there? Clearly, it's important to be at the table. So I just wanted to show a couple of really quick examples here of some of those trends. If you want more details, both of these next two case studies are available on our website. Go Light, it's an outdoor equipment company based in Colorado. They make lightweight clothing as well as supplies for outdoor travel, backcountry travel. And we did a project for them a couple of years ago which was looking at key priorities for reducing their carbon impact. They'd already done a Scope 1 and 2 inventory for their own company, but wanted to look back into their supply chain to see how important their supply chain was relative to their own footprint. And the result was, as you might expect, that their material selection was actually probably responsible for about 80% of their overall footprint. So understanding your footprint throughout the supply chain, throughout your entire value chain, can really help you focus on, where are the real opportunities to improve your footprint, and where are the risks in your overall footprint. The other thing about this is they certainly, their corporate responsibility report earned an A+ from the GRI, so that's important to certain stakeholders and certainly for stakeholders of this particular company. Another case study that I wanted to mention very briefly here was driven by the CDP supply chain initiative. This is ThyssenKrupp Elevators Americas. And a few years ago, they were asked to respond to the CDP supply chain. There was a very tight schedule involved, only a few months between when they were asked to do this and when they needed to respond. So it generated a lot of activity within the company. But in the end, they were able to report on a very tight schedule and satisfy a major sort of business-to-business request. There were some other sort of collateral benefits to the company where they were able to streamline some of the energy cost audits they were already doing, and certainly help their positioning and brand image among their customer base. So at this point, we're going to do another poll. The questions here are around the maturity of your carbon management. So it's not quite the same as the maturity slide that Zoe showed from the CDP, but I think you'll get the idea. So Dylan, if you could show that poll, that would be great.
Polls launch. We'll give about a minute or so to give everyone to respond.
Great.
This is John again. As folks are filling that out, I just, it's interesting to look at these questions because PE5 wins. We at one time were advanced, setting goals and making progress, but as a part of our merger, that kind of is, I would almost say we're back to an intermediate level, and that's, and we will have to reestablish our goals as a combined company. I think that's one thing that's just kind of common around carbon management is it is an active management process, something that has to be adapted as your companies change. So interesting just to look at that. I can't answer because I was an organizer.